Well, hello, you beautiful people. This is Anthony White, the Orange Tie Guy, talking about celestial dating and how to effectively build relationships that are founded upon a solid foundation and are effective in building friendship and growing stronger to become that awesome relationship that you search for, that you hope for, that you long for. So I had a conversation yesterday. A bunch of friends were together and we were playing some games. And one of my buddies brought up the idea and the concept of compromise. And he's like, well, you need to learn to compromise once in a while. And I'm thinking, no, you don't. And he's like, yeah, you do. And he was very adamant about it. Well, as I was explaining to him, I said, no, that's not necessarily a healthy relationship. And as he continued to talk and push, I was like, no, because when it comes down to it, if you have standards, if you have morals, if you have beliefs, if you have an idea, if you are who you are and you're genuine and authentic, and somebody is wanting to change you, or they will only want you if you stop doing this or you start doing this or something to that effect, end the relationship. That is not a healthy relationship. In fact, that's like the beginnings of a detrimental relationship, especially if it ends in marriage or continues to go into marriage. The reason I say that is because unmet expectations brings negative emotions. And when it comes to compromise, if you are a certain type of person and you act a certain way or you have certain desires, let's say you love to read. You love to read Nancy Drew or, I don't know, something like that. Danielle Steele, right? I mean, Napoleon Hill, whoever, doesn't matter, Anthony Robbins. Let's say you read a lot and that's your alone time. That's your time to rejuvenate, your time to be able to improve, etc. Well, and then all of a sudden you start a relationship and they're like, you don't spend enough time with me, or you don't give me enough time, or this or that or whatever. Then you're in the wrong relationship. End it. It does not require compromise or for someone to stop being who they are in order to prove to you or to set the standard for future reference and future engagements, interactions that, oh, well, if I'm reading and they want my time, I need to stop. Now, I say compromise because that's the word he used, and I don't like that at all. And in fact, by definition, if you actually think about compromise, specifically, what compromise says is flat out, compromise is an agreement or a settlement of a dispute that is reached by each side making concessions. So, in a sentence form, an ability to listen to two sides in a dispute, so that sets a standard of what compromise is. First, you're disputing about something, and devise a compromise acceptable to both. The secret of a happy marriage is compromise. Bull crap. Now, let me back up. Additional definition. A middle state between conflicting opinions or actions reached by mutual concession or modification. A compromise between commercial appeal and historical interest. Or, another definition, the acceptance of standards that are lower than is desirable. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so another way for compromise, instead of the noun form, it's the verb. So settle a dispute by mutual concessions. Okay, another, accept standards that are lower than is desirable. Okay, or like bring in disrepute or danger by indiscreet, foolish, or reckless behavior. Yeah, I don't care about pulling any of those verbs in there. But when it comes down to the reality of compromise, it's the idea of saying, I have this in my mind. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm fully 100% pro being open, receptive, to be willing to change your mind. I think this compromise idea, and we actually established as I started to talk with him, because I mean, I'm pretty passionate, as you can tell from this idea and concept. He's like, maybe I'm saying the wrong word, which he very much was. Then he later said, I think people need to communicate. Well, I'm like, well, duh. I mean, that's in my mind. I'm thinking, of course. But when it comes to compromise, it became a reality check for me that there are far too many of us that compromise. Compromise on standard, compromise on belief, compromise on what brings us happiness, compromise on who we are, our authentic, genuine us, me, Anthony White, the orange tie guy. It's saying, you need to stop being you or doing this in order for me to like you or accept you or to allow you to be a part of me or my life or something to that nature. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of like stubborn, pig-headed, prideful, arrogant people that are, and I use the term, when it comes to, the Church of Jesus Christ, hard-hearted. There are people that are just hard-hearted and they're like, no, this is the way I am. Suck it up and deal with it or get out of my face kind of a thing. And it's like, whoa, okay, whatever. And those people, you can tell, usually don't get much of anywhere. And they have few and far between of people who actually are willing to put up with that kind of crap because it's a give and a take. That's a relationship, is to give and take. But again, the word compromise was something that was very much a loud, negative mindset that I was saying, no, this is not happening. In fact, it's interesting because in my life, having been married and divorced, I went through the process of ultimately, I stopped coaching and being a relationship consultant. And it was because at the time, my ex didn't like the fact that I consulted or coached single women. And for whatever reason, just it was the idea of, I don't like this. And I was a people pleaser. And that's another story to talk about another time. But what I did was I said, in order for me to please my wife, I need to stop. And I gave up my business. I mean, I gave up my profession. What I had invested over 15 years of doing, I gave it up for her. And I cannot blame her because it was my choice when it comes down to it. But the reality is that I did compromise. I changed who I was to please somebody else. And guess what? When it came down to it, ultimately, didn't please her and came to a point where we're divorced. So when it comes down to it, oftentimes we don't see the beginning from the end, or the end from the beginning. And so what we do is we try to be, do, have whatever it is to please someone else or to be accepted of somebody else. Well, that's a false mentality. That's a mentality that will keep you stuck for a long time, if not forever. So when I talk about celestial dating, when I talk about celestial relationships, those that are burning and invigorating and something that lasts for a long time, I'm talking about relationships where you don't have to compromise on who you are. You can be who you are. Now, he alluded to the idea of communication. 100% you need to be communicating. You need to be open. maybe I'll do another video another time about this, but a lot of people, I talk a lot. We'll just put it this way. I'm a talker. I'm an orator. I share, and I have no problems or qualms about doing that. I'm very open. I open up, and that actually makes me vulnerable to others, whether it's verbal abuse, negative comments, whether it's whatever it is, it allows me to be vulnerable. But here's what's fascinating that you learn in the process of doing and becoming and practicing. What he was alluding to is that we need to communicate. We need to open up. We need to be able to share feelings like, you know what, I really don't like it that, you coach a lot of single women. Well, that's a personal insecurity. That's a selfish mentality in the sense of, there's nothing when it comes to a relationship, nothing sexual, nothing. It's a professional side thing. And honestly, I had no interest in any of the women at all, even before I, met my ex. It was, all professional, always professional. I step up, I put on that mantle and that mindset of being a coach, not thinking, hey, she's hot. No, it's that whole approach. Now, don't get me wrong. It would have been nice to discuss this, to have a conversation, to communicate, identify where are the negative thoughts and feelings. And if we kind of perused a little bit more in depth of where that insecurity came from, where those, and again, they are selfish. Insecurities is a selfish thing. It's saying that I have this fight or flight, mindset, and I don't like what you're doing, and you want to point at other people and blame them. Whereas it's like, no, we should own this and shift our mindset and mentality. Well, again, the idea of compromising is this notion of, guess what? We're disputing. I have to tell you, it has become phenomenal as a coach, as I have found relationships, marriages, families where they don't dispute, they don't argue, they don't fight, they talk. They literally just have conversations, and they talk a lot. They open up. And I got to tell you, that is what I'm fighting for in my life. I mean, being someone specifically who is very oratory, very open, very talkative. And it's interesting because I've found a lot, and I had this ongoing conversation with someone who's very personal in my life, who I love to pieces. And each time we address a certain topic about her family, namely her dad and her experience growing up, she will have this response of, I don't want to talk about this. No, we can't talk about this now, because it raises emotion. It raises back those negative experiences. And I've attempted probably about 36 times, to be perfectly frank, to help her to identify where are those negative feelings and uncover those layers so we can get to the core of the problem, so she can let go, so she can move on, so she doesn't have to keep disputing or arguing or defending or whatever the word is to attribute to her own personal torment and misery and negative memories of her past. So when it comes to compromise, no. There's no room in a solid, effective, celestial dating, wholesome relationship for compromise, because you shouldn't be disputing those things. You can have a conversation. You can have a wholesome, effective, positive conversation. But when it comes to compromise, this stuff, no, not at all. I hope this is beneficial, because I'm passionate about being authentic and genuine, to be open, to allow yourself to be vulnerable. And if you feel like you have to defend yourself or you have to be fighting, it's never a good thing. Well, everybody, this is Anthony White, the Orange Tie Guy, and I hope everything's going well with you. I hope you learned something from this. If not, well, hopefully the next one.